Welcome to Lavinia World. Today we're going to be making a fairy Christmas card. My name is Monica of Heartcraft Paper, and I'm so glad that you can join me today. For today's tutorial, I'm going to be using Fairy House. This is a new stamp set from Fairy Hugs. This particular image is about 4.5 inches tall and just about 4.5 inches wide. As you can see with this particular image, it has a lot of bold and solid stamping. Even with all of these solids, we'll still be able to color this in. We're going to use this tan ink pad in order to lay down some color onto the stamp. We're going to stamp this onto a piece of white cardstock. This is going to be the same technique you would use for no-line coloring. Even with solid stamps, you can still create your own definition and your own coloring just by simply utilizing this technique. Now, I did have to go back and stamp several times to make sure that I had a very clear image. Otherwise, I'll have a bit of a problem. And as you can see here, it came out perfectly. I love all the detail that I was able to get. Now, we're going to continue on, and I'm going to show you next how we're going to color this in. With no-line watercoloring, you can use a lot of different medias. I like using my Prismacolors for these instead of markers or watercolor. And the reason for this is because I'm able to actually provide more coverage over that tan ink and really make it turn invisible. So you're going to have to be very careful when you're coloring. You want to make sure that when you're doing these, now I started off here by kind of going around those empty spaces, but eventually what I started doing was just kind of filling in the whole entire leaf with my lightest color. Now I usually try to pick a light, medium, and dark color for my coloring. And to that, in order to create more shadowing, I will add black. Now, one of the things I like about using color pencils, especially Prismacolors, are the fact that they are so self-blendable. You don't need to have a liquid or Gambasol in order to blend these. They will blend within themselves because it is kind of a waxy type of pencil, but hyperpigmented as well as very easy to blend. Now, I am kind of fast forwarding through this, I know, but I want you to be able to see the transition of just how this is going to look with simple coloring and being able to actually introduce color onto solid imagery. I mean, it is pretty amazing if you know how to kind of work things. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, because guess what? A lot of what you're looking at in art is kind of representative. It doesn't always have to be exact. As long as your eye can catch it and translate it, that's exactly what you're trying to go for. So here's the reason why I decided on making this a Christmas card. Because the flowers that are actually on this stamp reminded me of poinsettias. Well, at least when they're colored red. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can probably color them in yellow and make them look like sunflowers. But I thought that would be a perfect idea in making a fairy Christmas card. So here you see that again, I'm coming in with a light, medium, and dark tone coloring. For this one, I don't necessarily want to bring in too much black because I don't want that kind of detracting from the coloring too much, but I still was able to get the shading done, and of course it's quite a small image. So let's go ahead and get on to the next part. I'm going to go into coloring the walls and the doors next. Okay, for the stonework, I did not have to bring in any black. And one of the reasons being for this, even though I'm keeping in with these very light grays, is because there is some type of the filling between the stones that we're going to utilize to help separate the stones. So you don't necessarily need a lot of black here. But I will say this, as you can see, the stones have quite a lot of detail. So the only reason that I'm bringing black in is not for shading, but for those particular details on the stone. And you'll see that as we kind of go. Now, for the filling though, in between the stones, I'm going to go ahead and come on in with some dark brown. I figured that coming in with dark brown would allow me to kind of keep the coloring throughout. These grays are more of a warm gray. And as you can see, I'm bringing in that black just to add in some details. So as you can see here, I'm kind of keeping in with those neutrals. I didn't want to go overly too on the blue side, but I wanted to have those warms, which is why the warm grays. So here you see I'm coming in, and that brown filling in between the stones actually creates that breakage for us, and the black is not necessarily needed for shadowing. So I've already colored in the door as well. It came in with two different colors, a light and a dark, and that was it. So I didn't have to put too much effort into it. But I wanted to add some gold accents just because anytime I think of fairies, I figure that they're the type of little creatures that just kind of hoard things and like to have very nice and shiny things, or at least that's the kind of stories that I have read. So I am adding some gold accents above the door, and I absolutely love adding in this gold pencil. Now, these are kind of harder to find with these smaller packages, so you do have to get the large package of the Prismacolors in order to find that, unless you buy it individually. But utilizing yellows, oranges, and then a little bit of a darker or a lighter brown, I should say, you'll come in with those colors. I was able to add a gold touch to the doorknob as well as the hinge. Finally, I'm coming in just with a very dark brown for the window in order to add that coloring in. I'm keeping it very simple for the window there. I mean, I'm just coming in with some browns. Then I'm going to come in with a little bit of a light blue for the window itself. Not too much detail there. We're down to the last leg of coloring. I came in with the moss green on the grass, as you can see that I did on the sides, but I'm coming in with more of a bluer and darker color in the grays. This will add a bit of contrast against the stonework on the wall. So one of the things with this though is, if you're noticing, I'm kind of coming in with that darker color. I'll lay over a lighter color just to kind of lighten that up. And then I'm going to bring in some moss green in order to put between the cracks there, because I wanted it to have the grass that's kind of growing in between the stonework. The only thing is that the moss green was very similar to these particular types of grays, because again, it's more bluer, it's not necessarily quite as vibrant green. So what I had to do was come in with a more green tone and just kind of go over that, and that added quite a bit of breakup between the stones. But even then, that still wasn't enough. I still had to come back in with some black pencil in order to give the stonework a little bit of shadowing there at the bottom, kind of darker the closer it is to you and lighter towards the back of the stone. So I think that kind of worked out, and you'll see that kind of breaking up here. So here you have the final image. It came out perfect. Now it's time to actually cut out the image. I'm going to fussy cut around the whole entire thing because I don't want to necessarily die cut it into a shape. I just want the image itself. So let's go ahead and kind of fast forward through this and get this done. Now that we've got our image cut out, I'm now ready to start die cutting. I have this Merry Christmas sentiment, and this is from Poppy Stamp. It is called Holly Merry Christmas, and as you can see, it's got several cutouts for berries, the letters, and a couple of the R's here that go right inside. I guess that's the white part there. I'm going to color these images in. And when I say color them in, I'm going to go ahead and bring in some Distress Oxide in Candied Apple. And I'm going to set this up in a way because I don't like wasting paper. So I'm going to use that white paper and just color it in. Utilizing a piece of washi tape, I folded it over flat. And then I'm going to adhere my items right onto that. So I'm able to just blend very easily right onto that tape. And it won't move about on me. As you can see, this actually works very well with these small little bits. It keeps the items locked down so that way I can do my coloring and blending. Now I am trying to keep within the same color scheme of reds, and I'm going to bring in some green as well for the Merry Christmas. Now you'll see in a bit just where I'm going to add that, but I'm going to come in and bring in this red, Candied Apple red. I'm going to be using this little dauber, and this particular dauber is one of my favorites. It's a Fantastics, and this is if you really need to daub color onto small little bits like this, or maybe you have a small area that you want to do, not necessarily getting a lot of color everywhere. So let's go ahead and fast forward and move on to the next bit. My Merry Christmas sentiment is now ready to take on some mowed lawn. I am going to be utilizing, again, another one of those Fantastics, but this has a little brush tip, and that's going to be for some of the finer items such as this, and it'll be a little bit easier to add the colors more specifically to the areas that I want, since this is actually a part of that die cut. Once the coloring is done here, I'm going to go ahead and utilize the quilting technique in order to inset all of those letters. As you can see here, I've added my tape to the back. Now all I have to do is kind of cut around it, just because it was a very small die cut with lots of intricate pieces that I am now going to have to go back and kind of fix. And as you can see here, I'm going through for the little berries actually to put in some tape right behind those areas, since it didn't catch with the first set of tape that I have here. Now it's just time to pick those off and put them right into the little spaces. And as you can see, it works very well to keep your items where you need them. To say the placement actually came out very well. Now for the tape, I'm just going to trim around that. You can use scissors if it's big enough, but for this particular image, I'm going to use my finger blade. We're almost done. We're almost there. Now we just have our flower making, and this is a sample of what we're going to be using. Again, reds and greens, and as you can see, it's got a little bit of sparkle and shine there from the glitter paste that I used. And I'm trying to keep reds in the centers, green in the center, and allowing that white just to kind of bloom out of there. So in order to catch this effect, I'm going to use my Candied Apple red, and then I'm going to use a blending brush. Depending on the type of project or what I'm doing or what I want to create, it's going to be between the blender and the blending brush. I think that with the blending brush, I can get just a little bit of amount. I can control the amount of Distress Oxide or ink that I'm picking up. Whereas with the blending tool, I would get way too much. Now I'm going to do this for all three of the flower petals here because we are going to require all three sets. With the leaf though, we are going to go ahead and utilize mowed lawn. Again, we're continuing with that same color scheme of red, white, and green, and then a little bit of that tan color which came through in the little fairy house. So moving on to this particular leaf, I'm just going to add a little bit of color. Now I picked up a little bit too much, so I'm just going to start off on the glass and then work my way up. I'll pick up some of the color off the glass as well and just start bringing in that color towards the end of the leaf. All right, once our coloring is done, it's time for flower formation. And what does this mean? We're going to use our tools, and these are flower formers. This is an 8mm ball, and I'm going to use that to kind of roll the paper around. And then I have a piercer. Now, this is part of an embossing kit from Martha Stewart. So this is a paper piercer. We're going to start with the leaf here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of create a little bit of a pinch. We're going to take the leaf and fold it kind of in half. This will help our flower kind of roll and create that divot where it kind of goes in, and then the outer part of the leaf will roll out. And the outer part is going to be made by rolling it with our flower former just along the edges. It will help to break apart that paper and stretch it, and those fibers are just going to bend along with that ball. And as you can see here, it created a very nice little leaf with the center fold and then just kind of flowing outwards, kind of in a waterfall fashion. We're going to do the same thing with all of our flower petals, where we come in with the flower forming ball and just work the rounded edges of the petal. Remember, this is on the back side of your flower. You want to make sure that it's not on the front side unless you're going to be making rosebuds where the center will need to come inwards. Once I've finished rolling from the outside, I'm going to come and push the center down and roll it slightly just to get those petals to kind of come towards the center. And as you can see, it's beautifully cupped. We'll repeat this process with the remainder of the flower petals. And once we're done here, we'll go ahead and start kind of forming that flower. And it's very simple. You'll be amazed at just how easy this can be. All right, time to start gluing. I'm just going to add a dab of glue right onto the center of my first petal, and then I'm going to add the second petal, just turning it slightly so that it has an overlap over the areas that are kind of absent of a petal. And I'll repeat the same process with the third flower petal. Once I have them set, and as you can see here, they have a very nice overlap. They're slightly askew from each other. I'm going to come in with my flower former and just press down very hard. Now, this is a foam sheet that I'm working on. It is about a 1/2 inch. I got this from Michael's, which you can find, and that will make your flower forming that much easier. Again, press down in the center, and there you have a perfect little flower. Now it's time to get the stamen into the center. Now, these little stamen that I have here, I got off of Amazon. You can probably find them at Michael's or Joann's in order to create flowers. But I have several colors, and I had red, in fact, so I decided to use these. All we're going to have to do is fold these in half and then insert them, just like so. First, we're going to have to pierce the paper in order to create a hole in the center. And this is what's going to act as the stem, as you can see. So let's go ahead and get our piercer and start piercing away. You're going to have to press fairly hard, and in order to fit all 5 of these stamen, it's going to have quite an opening. So you're going to have to push that down right onto your paper piercer. Now, normally, once I get that pierced on one side, I take these out and pierce on the other side. But this one has a very good opening in order to insert these stamen. So all you have to do is just fold them in half and then just insert. Now, you want to make sure you get this nice and compact. So I'm just kind of pressing there to make sure that I can get that in properly without too much tearing of the flower. One thing you'll want to remember, or you want to do typically, is add hot glue to the back if you're going to be setting these aside for later, because you don't want the flowers to move from where they are. But since I'm going to use them right away, they'll stay for now. In order to add some shine to this particular flower, I decided to add some glitter paste to this. I'm adding it to the stamen and then the outer part of the first layer of petals. Now, this one here, you can probably find from Gina K. They have several pastes that have glitter, and this is just a white glitter or a translucent glitter if you'd like. You can also utilize the Fairy Hug glitters if you want, with a little bit of glue just to add to that edge, but I find that using glitter paste holds that glitter and doesn't allow it to fall off of my work or my petals here. Now, once I have that done, as you can see, it does have quite a bit of shine. I'm going to go ahead and add that leaf right onto the back of my flower. Simply get a little dab of glue, and that's if I can open up the lid here. Get a little dab of glue right on that end and press it onto the flower leaf. Now, it doesn't have to be to the very center of the flower. You want to arrange it so that you can kind of see that color there kind of popping out a little bit, and just press. Now, typically I would put the leaf on first and then the glitter paste, but knowing me, whenever I'm working, I always end up doing something out of order. So here I come back again, adding a little bit more glitter. Here are the last of our embellishments. Now, this is from Memory Box, and this is called the Scribble Fond background. I'm going to utilize these in vellum, and as you can see, it's a very translucent type of paper. I absolutely love using vellum for some of my cards. I'm going to bring in some color. I'm going to dab in some mowed lawn right onto that leaf frond. That will bring in some color and it will look absolutely beautiful, very light and airy. Okay, so here you have what it's going to look like, and as you can see, the coloring is perfect. You still get a lot of translucence there, and we're just going to work these for the rest of the fronds there. Okay, here I have Alta New, and this is called the Garden Trellis. I'm utilizing this for my background, and as you can see, I do have some craft paper for the backing on that. Again, that's going to tie in with my color theme from my image. I'm just going to glue this right onto that craft cardstock there, and then we'll be back in a minute. Backing is ready to go. I am now ready to put this onto my card base and just kind of glue that on with liquid glue. Now, I am a liquid glue type of girl because it allows me to kind of maneuver things if I need to shift them over, but you can use double-sided tape. Time for the sentiment. Now, I know you're thinking, where is she going to put that on the front? But no, it's going to go inside the card. I have this scalloped oval that I die cut. I'm just going to use that as a backing to my sentiment because I don't want that white on white since it won't pop as much. But utilizing a 1/8 inch double-sided tape for the Mary, I use that because it does have the Scotch tape on it. I want it to be able to adhere, and utilizing liquid glue for that will not really work. The only part that I'm going to use liquid glue on is actually on the exposed part, which is the Christmas part of the sentiment. So we'll go ahead and get that going and start adding glue and then set our sentiment down. Now, some of this sentiment is going to hang over, and that's just the holly leaves, which is kind of perfect because either way, that part has some color and won't go into blending with the white. So here you have it. A nice little sentiment on the inside of your card. Okay, time to add the fronds. Now I'm going to use double-sided tape. This is about a 1/2 inch. I'm just going to add that to the left center part of the card. And the reason for the double-sided tape is just to allow me ease of placement. Now, reminder, flowers are going to go over this particular piece, so it doesn't matter just how much is left exposed. So I decided to go with a cluster of 2 fronds on the top portion of the card. This is going to have some of the fronds and the imagery kind of hanging over the sides, which is not too bad. I'm just going to use a larger envelope or possibly even a small little card box, and that will help keep that kind of safe because we are utilizing flowers. It will help to have them nice and tucked away where they won't get damaged. I only set one for the bottom, as you can see here. Time to bring in our flowers. Now for this portion, we are going to utilize hot glue. So just be careful, make sure you don't burn your fingers. I'm going to be utilizing these flowers. Of course, they came out very lovely. They have all this nice shine and sparkle with the glitter paste. Now it's just a matter of fixing these ends. I'm going to trim off the end of the stamen. And once I have those trimmed off, I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue onto the back. And that will help it kind of stay in place, as well as allow us to glue it down directly onto the card. Now, typically I would add the glue first and then let it dry just so that my stamen don't move around. But in this case, I'm fairly sure it's okay. It's not an issue. It didn't move around on me, so not a problem. Let's go ahead and get this down onto our card. Typically, I would start with the center flower, but again, as always, I ended up working kind of in the reverse order. So not to worry, I just made sure I placed it fairly centered, and I already know where my other flower placement is going to be. We're down to our final item. This is our fairy house. Now, for this particular image, I'm going to use 1/4 inch foam tape, and I'm going to double that up so it gets a little bit of extra height. I'm first going to measure across my image to make sure that I get a good piece. I'm just going to kind of guesstimate right now, but then I go ahead and double this up. I stick one piece to the other, and then I'll trim that off. Once I have that trimmed off, stick it right onto my image, and I'm set to go and repeat the process for several more to come. Ready to start setting down our image. All we have to do is peel away the backing on the foam tape. You're going to center this vertically. You'll note that, again, this image will actually hang over your card, which is absolutely fine. Not everything has to be on the card itself, but this adds a little bit of cuteness, a little bit of dimension, so it's very different than most cards. Absolutely. All right, so here's a closer look at our card. I mean, this is beautiful. And then once you open it up, you have your Merry Christmas sentiment in lots of color. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching Lavinia World. For more videos and tutorials like these, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the little bell notification button in order to receive notifications for new video uploads.